He noticed her before she spoke, the kind of noticing that happens quietly, like realizing the room had been holding its breath. The late afternoon light slid through the cafe window, catching in her hair as she leaned over her book, her fingers tracing a line beneath a sentence she probably wasn't reading anymore. She wasn't trying to be seen, and maybe that's what made it impossible to look away. He'd been sitting 2 tables over, pretending to scroll through his phone, pretending not to feel that pull, the kind that tightened the air, sharp and magnetic. She looked up once, almost by accident. Their eyes met just long enough for him to forget whatever he was supposed to be doing. There it was. The pause. The shift. The invisible thing that happens before anything happens. She smiled. Not fully, just the hint of one. The kind that says, "I've caught you." He looked down, but too late. The moment had already left its mark. She closed her book, exhaling softly. "You've been staring for a while," she said, voice low, not unkind. He froze. "I wasn't." She tilted her head, studying him. "You were." The space between them felt too small, though 2 tables still stood there like polite excuses. He wanted to look away, but curiosity won over sense. She was older, mid-40s, maybe, but she carried it like an advantage, not a burden. Confident in the way she sat, how she stirred her coffee slowly, the way her bracelets whispered against each other when she moved. He realized he didn't know how to speak to someone who didn't need to be impressed. "What are you reading?" he managed, just to fill the air. She glanced down at the book, then back at him. "Something I've already read. I just wanted the company of the words." It was such a quiet, human thing to say that it made him smile. "Does it work?" "Sometimes," she said. "Sometimes it's better when someone notices." The line lingered longer than either expected. When she stood to leave, he thought she might walk past, without another word. But she paused by his table, her perfume, something faint and warm, like amber, brushing the edge of his breath. "You're too young to look at women that way," she said softly. He looked up. "And how's that? Like you don't know what it'll cost you." Her voice carried a trace of amusement, but underneath it was something else, recognition, maybe. The way 2 people see themselves reflected in the other and wish they didn't. He swallowed. "Maybe I don't care." She smiled then, slow, deliberate. "Your trouble." He should have laughed, should have said something clever, something to undo the tension twisting quietly between them. Instead, he leaned forward, close enough that his words brushed her skin. "You like trouble." The air shifted again, a small earthquake contained within 4 words. She didn't answer. She just looked at him for a beat too long, something flickering behind her eyes. Not surprise, but memory. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. The sound cut through the quiet like a blade. She glanced at the screen, her expression unreadable, and turned back toward the door. "Maybe," she said finally, almost to herself. "But not tonight." And then she was gone, leaving behind the scent of her perfume, the echo of her voice, and the kind of silence that makes you wonder what line you just crossed. He sat there for a long moment, staring at the door, his pulse still unsteady. The phone on his table lit up, a message from an unknown number. "Next time, don't hide behind your coffee." The screen dimmed, and the air, once again, forgot how to breathe. He hadn't planned to see her again. That message, the one that appeared on his phone like a dare, should have been the end of it. But curiosity doesn't end politely. 3 days later, he saw her again. Same cafe, same corner seat, same half smile when she looked up and saw him standing there, half uncertain, half caught. "You came back," she said. He tried to sound casual. "You texted me. I didn't think you'd answer." "I almost didn't." She raised an eyebrow. "But you did." That was her way, never quite giving him enough ground to stand on. She spoke in questions that sounded like statements, always one layer deeper than she let him see. He sat across from her, though she hadn't invited him to. The sunlight had changed this time, softer, more forgiving. The space between them felt charged again, but quieter, like both had agreed not to acknowledge it too soon. They talked, small things first. Work, classes, the city. He told her he painted sometimes, though he didn't call it that. "Mostly sketches," he said. "Things I see that I can't say." She nodded, understanding too easily. "I used to paint," she admitted, "before life got noisy." He tilted his head. "You don't seem like someone who lets life tell her what to do." She laughed, quietly, without joy. "You'd be surprised." Something in her voice cracked then, just a hairline fracture. He didn't push, but she must have seen the question in his eyes. My ex-husband, she said, almost idly, stirring her coffee. He liked everything polished. Perfect. I learned how to be quiet around him. He hesitated. You don't sound quiet. I'm relearning how not to be. The words landed between them like confession and challenge both. It should have been easier for him to pull away. She was his friend's mother. That was the line. The one that should have stopped everything. He'd met her son years ago, shared too many summers in that same house. He used to wave at her from the porch, never thinking he'd one day be sitting across from her, watching the light slide down her wrist as she lifted her cup. The danger wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, personal, the kind of thing that mattered only because it could ruin something good. When the conversation fell quiet, he realized they were both listening to the same song drifting from the cafe speaker, an old one, the kind you only hear by accident. She smiled faintly. This was playing the day I left him, she said. He didn't know what to say, so he reached for his glass, and his hand brushed hers, brief, almost clumsy. But neither pulled away. Her pulse was steady against his fingertips, but her breath hitched. The moment stretched, fragile, electric, real. He whispered, "Do you still miss him?" She shook her head, eyes locked on his. "No," she said, "but I still miss who I was before him." The honesty in her voice made the air tremble. He wanted to tell her something, anything that would make it easier, but the words never came. Instead, their hands stayed there, barely touching, long enough to say everything they couldn't. Outside, the light shifted, and she finally pulled back, her expression unreadable. "Careful," she murmured. "You keep reaching like that, and I might start forgetting what's safe." He smiled faintly, not looking away this time. "Maybe," he said, "that's the point." And for a moment, neither of them breathed. It had been a week since that moment in the cafe, that fleeting touch that refused to fade. He'd told himself it was nothing, a mistake of timing and curiosity. But mistakes didn't replay in your mind at 3 in the morning. When she texted him again, the words were simple. "I found your sketch." He didn't remember leaving it behind. The page from his notebook where he'd drawn her hand, the way her fingers curled slightly as she held her coffee cup. He'd torn it out, thinking he'd thrown it away. Now she knew. He hesitated before replying, thumb hovering over the screen, but his body moved before sense could stop him. "Can I come get it?" A pause. Then, "If you're quiet." Her house was the same one he'd known since he was a teenager. White porch, creaking steps, the faint scent of gardenia that never left the air. But this time, stepping inside felt different. Forbidden, somehow smaller and larger all at once. She stood by the window, back to him. The lamplight softened. Everything, her shoulders, her hair, the curve of her neck. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, still facing the glass. "I almost didn't." "Then why did you?" He didn't answer. Because she'd asked. Because he wanted to see her again. Because he couldn't stop thinking about her. She turned then, holding the folded page between two fingers. "You drew this from memory?" He nodded. "I couldn't help it." A long silence. Her eyes flickered, not angry, just searching. "You shouldn't look at me that way," she said softly. He took a step closer. "How am I looking at you?" "Like you already know what happens next." They were too close now. The sketch fell from her hand, landing soundlessly on the rug. His breath caught as her perfume reached him again. Something warm, nostalgic, disarming. He shouldn't have moved closer, but he did. She shouldn't have stayed still, but she did. The room seemed to shrink, the air thickening with everything unsaid. His hand lifted before he could stop it, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. Her eyes fluttered, just once. It would have been nothing, just a touch, but the space between them had already learned how to catch fire. She whispered, "You don't know what you're doing. Then tell me to stop." Her breath trembled, but the words didn't come. And then, the sound of a car door slamming outside. Voices. Her son's. She froze. So did he. A second heartbeat of silence, sharp and heavy. She stepped back, her composure breaking just enough to reveal the fear beneath it. "You have to go," she said, almost pleading. He nodded, moving toward the door, but not before she caught his wrist, briefly, her touch saying everything her voice couldn't. "Don't come here again," she whispered. "Please." He nodded once, though both knew it was a lie. Outside, the cold night hit him hard, cutting through the heat still burning in his chest. Through the window, he saw her silhouette turn away, hand pressed against her lips. Almost that should. and have happened. And in the quiet that followed, he understood. Wanting her was already the point of no return. Rain found the city before dawn, slow at first, then relentless, turning the world into blurred reflections. He walked without purpose, hood pulled low, trying to shake the image of her face when she told him don't come again. He lasted 4 days. When he saw her again, it wasn't planned. She stood under the awning outside the small bookstore near the cafe, coat damp, eyes unfocused as if her thoughts had walked miles without her. He almost passed by. Almost. But then she saw him, and for a second, something like relief flickered across her face before she masked it. "You shouldn't be here," she said, voice barely louder than the rain. "You look like you needed someone to be." A breath. A faint tremor. She didn't tell him he was wrong. They went inside. The shop was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every movement sound too loud. The air smelled like paper and wet wool. She wandered toward the back aisle, fingers grazing the spines of books she wasn't reading. He followed, close but not touching. "Does he know?" he asked suddenly. She stopped. "Who?" "Your son." Her hand froze mid-reach. "There's nothing to know." He gave a half-smile. "You keep saying that like you believe it." She turned then, the look in her eyes sharp, alive. "Do you have any idea what this could do to him?" "To me?" He didn't flinch. "I'm not asking for anything you don't already want." Her lips parted, breath unsteady. The denial didn't come. They stood too close now. The thin aisle barely had enough space to hold them. The air pulsed between heartbeats. "You think this is simple?" she whispered. "You're 24. I've lived a life already. I know where this ends." "Maybe I don't care where it ends," he said. Her laugh was soft, pained. "You should." He reached out, not to grab, just to steady the space between them. His hand brushed her arm, her sleeve damp from the rain. She didn't move. The electricity was immediate, frightening in its quiet certainty. "You make me forget," she murmured. "Maybe that's what you need." Her eyes lifted to his, and for a heartbeat the world tilted. The sound of rain on the glass became background noise, her breath shallow and uneven. "If I let this happen," she said slowly, "I lose the part of myself I've fought to keep." He stepped closer, barely an inch. "And if you don't?" She exhaled shakily, her voice trembling against restraint. "Then I keep pretending I don't wake up thinking about you." The confession hung between them, raw, unguarded, dangerous. He didn't answer. He just looked at her the way you look at something you're not supposed to touch. She took half a step forward. Her hair brushed his hand, a whisper of contact, electric enough to stop thought. His fingers twitched, wanting to reach for her, not daring to. The air felt heavy, waiting. Then, the door chimes. A voice called her name from the front of the store. Her body went still. She didn't turn around. Neither did he. "Go," she whispered, eyes closed. "Please." He hesitated, then stepped back, the distance suddenly unbearable. When he reached the door, he looked once more. She was still there, hand pressed to the shelf beside her, eyes open now, watching him leave. The rain outside swallowed the rest. And the kiss that should have happened didn't. He didn't see her for almost 2 weeks. The silence was its own kind of punishment, loud, echoing. Every place they'd met seemed haunted now. The cafe, the bookstore, even the street where rain once blurred the world between them. He told himself to move on. He tried. But the heart doesn't always listen to reason. It listens to memory. Then, one night, he saw her name light up his phone. "We need to talk." She met him at the pier after sunset, where the air smelled like salt and cold iron. The waves hit the posts in slow rhythm, the sky still holding the last thread of orange. Before it gave into dark, she stood with her back to him, hands shoved in her coat pockets. The wind caught her hair, pulling strands across her face, but she didn't move to fix them. "You shouldn't have come," she said when he stopped beside her. "You asked me to." Her voice lowered. "I didn't think you would." He laughed quietly, not cruelly, just tired. "You keep saying that, like you don't already know I would." She turned then, and in her eyes was something new. Not softness. Fear. "I think someone knows," she said. The words sank like stones. He frowned. "Know what?" "My son." Her breath hitched on the word. He saw the sketch. "The one you left here last time." "I told him it was from an art class, that I didn't even know the artist." "And he believed you?" "I don't know." Her fingers tightened around the edge of her coat. "He's been quiet since. Careful. Watching me." The wind carried silence between them. He wanted to reach for her, but his hands stayed in his pockets. "This isn't just about us anymore," she said, voice trembling. "It's his life, his trust. If he finds out—" She stopped, unable to finish. He swallowed hard. "I didn't mean for any of this to hurt you." She looked up sharply. "You didn't." "I did. I'm the one who kept letting you back in." A gull cried overhead. The sea roared louder, as if to drown out what neither wanted to say. He stepped closer, too close. The wind pressed her coat against his arm. "You're not the only one lying," he said quietly. Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. Then, finally, "I told him I hadn't seen you in months. He asked about you the other night. Said you seemed different." She drew in a breath. "What did you say?" "That maybe you'd met someone." The words hung between them like an open wound. Her hands trembled. And he asked if I knew who." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Do you think he does?" "I don't know," he said. "But I think he's starting to." The air turned brittle with danger and desire, tangled so tightly they couldn't separate one from the other. She reached out, brushing her fingers over his sleeve, just once. Her voice broke. "Then this has to end." He shook his head slowly. It already should have. Their eyes met, her fear, his defiance. And in that fragile heartbeat, it was clear. Neither could walk away, not yet. A phone buzzed in her pocket. She looked down. The name on the screen froze her breath. Her son. The night wind carried the sound of the ringing, steady and merciless. And the space between them, for the first time, truly felt dangerous. The call from her son went unanswered. It rang once more, then stopped. The silence that followed was louder than the ocean itself. She stood there, phone still in her hand, rain starting to fall again, light, cold, insistent. The pier lights flickered against the water, painting everything in soft, trembling gold. He waited, watching her shoulders rise and fall with every unsteady breath. Finally, she turned. "He knows," she said quietly. "Even if he doesn't say it. He knows something's changed." He took a step closer, not out of boldness, out of instinct. "Then what now?" Her eyes met his, searching, tired. "Now I have to be the adult in this story." He almost smiled at that, but it never reached his mouth. "And I have to pretend I'm not already in too deep." The rain came harder, blurring the world around them. She moved under the wooden canopy, and he followed. The narrow space forced them close, her back against the railing, his breath uneven as he tried to keep a distance that didn't exist anymore. "I keep thinking," she said softly, "if you were 10 years older, if I were 10 years braver." He shook his head. "It wouldn't change this." "What do you mean?" "I'd still want you," he said, voice low. "Exactly like this. Messy, complicated, real." Her laugh broke halfway through, trembling. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why?" "Because I'll believe you." They were inches apart now, the space between them alive with everything they buried under restraint. Her hand brushed his chest, maybe to push him away, maybe to steady herself. Either way, it stayed there. He caught her wrist gently, his thumb tracing the inside where her pulse beat fast. "Tell me to leave," he whispered. She didn't. Her eyes fell to his mouth, lingered, then closed as though she were listening to something only she could hear. "I can't," she breathed. "But I should." He leaned in, not touching, just close enough that the air trembled between them. Her hair brushed his jaw, damp from the rain, carrying that faint trace of amber that had haunted him for weeks. "I don't want to ruin you," she whispered. "You won't," he said. "You'll just make me honest." Her hand rose to his face, fingers hesitant, trembling, a touch that said this is goodbye, even if the words never followed. For a heartbeat, they stayed suspended, two people balanced on the edge of a choice neither could undo. Then she stepped back. Just enough. Her voice was steady again, though her eyes weren't. "If we cross this line, there's no coming back. Not for me. Not for you." He nodded, rain tracing down his cheek like an answer. Then maybe the line was the point. Something inside her cracked, not from weakness, but from understanding. She looked at him one last time, really looked, at the youth he carried like a flame, at the ache that mirrored her own. And then, softly, she smiled. The same slow smile that had started everything. "You're still trouble," she said. He managed a quiet breath. "And you still like trouble." Her eyes glistened, not from the rain. "Maybe once," she whispered. "But not tonight." She turned and walked away, the pier lights catching on the outline of her coat, fading slowly into the rain. He didn't follow. He just stood there, watching the distance grow, feeling the strange calm that comes when something ends, or begins again, differently. When his phone buzzed, it was her message. "Thank you for not making me choose." He read it twice, then looked up at the dark horizon where she'd vanished. The storm had stopped, but the air still carried her name. Spring came quietly, the kind of season that doesn't announce itself, just slips in while you're not looking. The rain stopped. The air softened. Life moved forward, as it always does. He hadn't seen her in months. He'd convinced himself that was how it needed to be, clean edges, no loose threads. But sometimes, late in the evening, he'd catch that faint scent of amber on someone passing by and feel the ache of unfinished sentences. Then, one morning, as he sat sketching at the cafe, their cafe, he looked up and froze. She was there. Not by accident this time. She saw him before he could look away. And when their eyes met, the world folded in on itself, quiet, slow, inevitable. She walked over, calm but cautious, like someone testing the water after a long winter. "Do you still sit here every day?" she asked. "Not every day," he said, smiling a little. "Just when I want to remember why I started drawing again." Her lips curved. "Still trouble, then?" He laughed softly. "Only on good days." There was no tension now, no edge of danger. Just the weight of everything they'd been through, softened into understanding. Time had done what time always does. It dulled the sharpness, left the truth bare. She sat across from him. The sunlight touched her hair again, same as it had that first day. "I thought I'd never come back here," she said. "But lately, I stopped feeling guilty for missing it." He nodded. "Sometimes missing something means you're finally ready to stop running from it." She looked at him for a long moment. That same steady gaze that once undid him completely. "You've grown up." He smiled faintly. "Or maybe I finally caught up." Her eyes softened, and for the first time, she reached across the table without hesitation. Their hands met, not secretive, not forbidden, just real. The warmth of her palm felt different now. Calmer. Certain. "I used to think what we had was a mistake," she said. "Now I think it was just mistimed." "Maybe timing doesn't matter," he said. "Maybe some people just circle back when they're supposed to." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead lightly against his. A small gesture, quiet, human, enough. "I missed you," she whispered. He closed his eyes. "I never stopped." They stayed like that. No rush, no guilt, just the kind of silence that feels like home. Outside, the cafe door opened, and the wind carried the sound of laughter from the street. Life moved on, unbothered. But for a moment, time bent to them again, the same way it had at the start. When she finally pulled back, her smile was slow and certain. "So," she murmured, brushing his hand with her thumb, "what happens next?" He grinned, voice low. "Maybe we should just let it go." Hot beverage. Did you enjoy the story? Speech balloon. What kind of stories would you like to hear next? More slow burn love, second chances, or something new entirely?